I gotta ask, where were the people who directed Kenobi when the sequel trilogy was being made? Cause my god, did Disney really step up the quality after those movies. Don't get me wrong, I liked episode 7. It was safe, but it was fine if it was safe because, it was years after we got the original trilogy and prequels, and then episode 8 came out and it took some chances, it subverted expectations, and as time went on, I kind of started to grow on it a little bit, but then that caused episode 9, and oh boy, that went places. Although, if we got anything good out of episode 9, it was the delivery of
everything.
Seriously, try to find someone who makes a delivery that much better for just saying the word everything. Ever since the launch of Disney Plus, Disney has been really knocking it out of the park with a lot of their Star Wars IPs. First we got Mandalorian, then the second season, and then Book of Boba Fett, which actually became 2.5 for Mandalorian. But what about Kenobi though? Should you watch Kenobi? Right at when Order 66 happens. I'm beginning a sense of pattern with the Disney Plus shows. We've seen this with Bad Batch, we've seen this Grogu's flashback, the last season of the Clone Wars. It just seems like they really want to expand on this major event in Star Wars. And then we cut to 10 years after Order 66, so then I guess we can establish when this actually takes place, how old Ben is, and we more or less get to see what he's been doing for the last 10 years. It looks like he's working on, I want to say, fish? Cutting up fish, he's putting that in his pocket like is that his pay for the day? Is that he gets to take that home and eat that for dinner? I'm not quite sure. It baffles me to this day even. And then we go to see his home, which is just a cave outside of Tatooine, close enough that he can continue to spy on 10-year-old Luke, and Ben just coming up being like
you trained his father?
Jeez, Ben, that's a low blow. The man had to cut him apart and watch him burn alive. You think you'd be a little more sympathetic about that whole thing. And then the Inquisitors show up looking for Jedi, but it seems like they're not actually hunting for Kenobi, they're hunting for a completely separate Jedi. But, the third sister, who we learn later on is named Reva, is particularly looking for Kenobi for some odd reason, and really tends to come to blows with the other Inquisitors, especially the Grand Inquisitor on that. Eventually, she has enough of him and decides to cut him down. This is the same guy, right? And he's killed off 5 years before he's supposed to be. That's like a continuity issue, right? And then he's back a couple episodes later, somehow. Okay, look, if you want to pull from the comics or whatever as inspiration for your movie or show, whatever, fine. But at least properly explain it within the context of the show. Don't make your viewers do the hard work and try to find the explanation for that elsewhere. And the whole premise behind this is that the third sister wants to capture Kenobi for some reason. So she hires bounty hunters to kidnap Leia. Organa contacts Kenobi out of the blue after 10 years and begs him to go find Leia for her. Kenobi resists the idea of trying to make excuses, saying that he has to protect the boy, but Organa responds by saying that Leia is equally as important. And just like that, he's off to the races, going off on an adventure to save Leia, eventually learning that Anakin survived and is actually Darth Vader. And I kind of had my reservations about that, considering that in the original idea, episode 3 and 4 are like 20 years apart, and that whole time frame, Vader has been hunting Kenobi this whole time and not being able to find him. So when this show came out and I started watching it, I did actually have the one rule that Vader and Kenobi cannot meet, period. Even if Vader does show up in this show and has a prominent role. But episode 3, I was kind of ready to tear the show a new one by doing that, by breaking that rule for me. But then episode 6 came around and I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm actually really glad that they broke that rule in this fight, because this fight, holy crap, this fight. It's always been one thing for me with the comics, especially the Vader ones and everything, that Vader just always seems to get the win at the end of the day. And actually just seeing him get his shit kicked in general is very cathartic, and I'm very happy to see that. I'm very happy they did that. It even gets to the point in the show where Palpatine actually has to call up Vader and tell him that he needs to actually stop dedicating resources to Kenobi and focus on actually helping him run the Empire, because he literally let an entire rebel cell escape just so he can have a one-on-one duel with Kenobi. There are some kind of issues that I've noticed with the this show and that others have actually pointed out as well. And a lot of the, especially Starfighter-based stuff, we actually only ever see only a handful of actual Starfighter ships. Like in that one scene where the Star Destroyer chasing Kenobi's big ship is just firing on him. No one's launching TIE fighters. We're not using those. There's no pilots on board this Star Destroyer. There are no pilots at the prison area. What the heck? Were all the Imperial pilots just on strike for the weekend or something during these events? I mean, what the heck happened with them? And then there's Reva. I don't care for Reva. I think her motivation for wanting to kill Kenobi is kind of weird. Oh, because Anakin was his apprentice, and Anakin was the one who sacked the Jedi Temple with Order 66 and everything. She, by proxy, blames Kenobi for not being able to stop him while he was off-world fighting General Grievous and ending the Clone Wars. And then eventually being recruited by the Inquisitors, who are actually just under Vader's control and Anakin's by proxy. Huh? And she knows fully well that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker. Heck, she even tells Kenobi. That's the big reveal we knew was gonna happen with this show, and it's from Reva. And we actually get this really badass fight scene between Vader not even pulling out his own lightsaber. He uses the Force and then uses Reva's to kill her, effectively, which is kind of cool. Although she doesn't actually die. She goes on to episode 6 and fights Ben and tries to kill Luke. She kind of just felt all over the place. I even had to watch this show a second time thinking, okay, maybe I missed something with her. Maybe if I watch it a second time, I'll pay attention to the dialogue a little more and maybe I'll get something that the second viewing would give me that the first one didn't. And I still don't know. I think Reva's kind of a weird character. I think her motivations for being an Inquisitor are actually backwards. Sure, she wants to kill Kenobi because of Anakin, but then she's also working under Anakin, knowing he's Vader. So why wouldn't she actually want to kill Vader? Why wouldn't she want to work with the rebels and eventually try to kill him? Also, she survives getting stabbed by a lightsaber. Like, straight on. Name one other character who has managed to pull that off.
Hello.
So I guess Disney can just decide who can survive lightsaber stab or not. It's not just a pre-established thing that anyone who gets stabbed by a lightsaber pretty much just dies. And then there's the last character in Leia. I actually liked her in this. I think she was really good. She kind of embodied both Padme and Anakin in a way. And for Leia to talk to the man who basically knew both her actual parents is actually kind of a neat little thing, is that Leia's the person that actually gets Kenobi back on his feet and not Luke, who still has a role in this show, just not nearly as prominent as Leia does. We also get to see Qui-Gon Jinn as a actual Force ghost and not just a disembodied voice like he was in the Clone Wars series. It's kind of cool to see him here in a way, either like kind of setting up Kenobi for the next 10 years where he just full on becomes Ben Kenobi as we know him in episode 4, but also at the same time, like, is this possibly setting up for a second season? It kind of leaves it open-ended. We don't know, and honestly, it doesn't seem like they're against exploring the idea of a second season. Maybe in season 2, Qui-Gon takes on a similar role to what Ben would be taking on for Luke in episode 5 and 6. But all in all, I do think this is definitely a solid show to consider watching, especially if you are a fan of Kenobi and the character in general. I wouldn't say this is as up there as high as Mandalorian, but I wouldn't say it's as low as Boba Fett either. I think a second season is definitely in order to kind of flesh out some more of these characters, get some more detail with people like Reva especially and how that's going to play out, because obviously it does feel like, at least for her, there is definitely either a sequel series or a second season of Kenobi that's going to be going into her story a little more. But what did you all think about Kenobi? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was better than Mandalorian or worse than Book of Boba Fett? Do you think my opinion is completely wrong? Did I miss something when talking about this? I know I've definitely missed characters like Lola and Bail Organa and Wade. Oh my. But with that said, I hope you leave a like, comment. See you in the next video.